Chapter 1. Born of the Abyss. The heart of the cave resembled the innards of some slumbering stone behemoth, an endless expanse of suffocating black, as though light itself had been banished from its dominion. The air hung heavy, thick with an ancient scent, a mingling of cold stone that remembered time, and a chill that pulsed from the bowels of the earth. Droplets fell from unseen heights, each one echoing faintly like the whispers of angry phantoms. The ceiling above, jagged and uneven, bristled with sharp outcrops that gleamed faintly under the bioluminescent fungi scattered like dying stars. And there she was, still as death. Her turquoise armor caught the faintest glow, its golden trim flickering like embers in the void. At its center, a sapphire gem pulsed with dim, rhythmic light. She stirred at last, her movements slow and reluctant, born of necessity. Pain flooded her limbs as she propped herself up on an elbow. The coarse ground beneath her offered no mercy. Her long crimson hair, like the trail of a bleeding wound, clung damply to her back. So I'm still alive, she thought, a flicker of annoyance flickering through her dazed astonishment. Her breath came in ragged gasps, but already she was assessing the damage. Superficial wounds only. Nothing fatal. She would survive. Her blue eyes, sharp despite the haze, scanned the void defiantly. She did not recognize this place. The last thing she remembered was the gate. That cursed thing, she muttered as she forced herself to her feet. Of all places, it had to throw me here. Before her stretched a narrow passage, an invitation or a threat, curling deep into the dark. Turning back was not an option. Well then, she said, her voice laced with weary irony, and took her first step. Cold gnawed at her bones. Her hand brushed the rock wall for balance. Threads of mineral veins glimmered briefly under the fungi's dull light, then vanished like stars retreating behind heavy clouds. The deeper she ventured, the tighter the tunnel became, the damp walls closing in as if whispering warnings to turn back. But she pressed forward. Hold it together, she whispered to herself. There's always a way out, always. Far ahead, a pale glow began to shimmer, faint but real. Her heartbeat quickened, and with it, a current of hope surged through her veins, urging her onward. The tunnel opened suddenly into a vast chamber. She caught her breath, not at its size, but at what floated within. Orbs of light, ethereal and alive, hovered midair, pulsing in hues of azure, emerald, and violet, shifting gently as if breathing. Their glow painted the stone floor in patterns that felt like dreams or perhaps the promise of nightmares. What is this place? She murmured, rooted in place, eyes wide. Her breath caught in her throat. This is unreal. The cave's nightmarish gloom gave way to a stillness almost sacred. Pools of water lay scattered across the uneven floor, their surfaces gleaming under the floating lights. At the heart of it all, a towering structure rose, a silent giant in the dark. Her gaze climbed its form, and her voice followed in a hush. A temple, she whispered, all bleeding into disbelief. Her eyes traced its lines again. What's a temple doing in a place like this? Her steps slowed as she approached the colossal building. It was carved of pale limestone, worn by time yet defiantly unyielding, as though daring oblivion to claim it. Wide steps led to an arched entrance flanked by towering pillars. Each column was a masterpiece etched with exquisite precision, humans and beasts locked in eternal struggle, their frozen expressions bearing agony, defiance, and something that felt like warning. Well, she said, attempting a thread of dry humor, looks like we've found the heart of the cave. But her words fell into the heavy silence like stones into a void. Her gaze was drawn upward, toward the dome that crowned the chamber. At its center, a grand mural blazed with color too vivid, too real. She froze. There, at its heart, stood a figure wreathed in fire-red hair, triumphant amid chaos. In one hand, a severed head raised high. In the other, a blade engulfed in flame. Around her, soldiers writhed in agony, their bodies devoured by flame. The mural was not mere pigment on stone. It radiated a presence, a power, as if the battle it depicted still raged within its very bones. And the face. The face was too familiar. "Impossible," she whispered, barely breathing. But there was no denying the resemblance, the wild hair, the unyielding gaze, the aura of devastation. It was like staring into a reflection twisted by time and legend. A shiver rippled across her skin. A hidden cold sank into her marrow. "Logalbenda, you old fraud," she muttered bitterly, her voice laced with quiet blame. "You were right all along." The old sorcerer's words echoed once more in her mind, those warnings she had once dismissed as the ramblings of a withered fool. But here, in this forgotten place, everything came into harrowing focus. Her fate had been carved into stone long before her birth. And nothing, no flight, no denial, could ever erase it. "So that's it. This is what it was all along," she murmured, a cryptic smile curling on her lips. "Seems I wasn't running from my fate. I was walking right into it." She approached the temple with steady steps, pausing at the threshold to brush her fingers gently across a nearby column. "What secrets did you guard so stubbornly, old stones?" Within, a spectral glow bathed the chamber in pale light. The floor was a tapestry of vibrant mosaics, interlocking patterns woven in brilliant hues. Columns soared toward the vaulted ceiling, their surfaces carved with celestial beings locked in eternal dances, their movements frozen in time. She moved in silence, her gaze drawn irresistibly to a stone altar at the far end. Its surface was cracked with age, lined at its edges with strange runes that pulsed dimly, as though breathing with the room itself. But it wasn't the altar that captured her breath, it was what rested atop it. A severed arm. Colossal in size, unfathomable in scale. This was no limb of man, but something greater. The fingers stretched as long as a forearm, wrapped in pale, bluish skin pulled taut over joints like chiseled granite. The veins shimmered like frozen rivers, and the dark ring on its middle finger no longer looked like jewelry. It was a rusted shackle. The cut was jagged, brutal. This arm had not been severed, it had been torn away. She froze, breath held tight in her lungs, her mind struggling to grasp the enormity of what lay before her. This wasn't a relic. It was a fragment of something vast. And the air thickened around it, as if the arm exuded a silent gravity, an invisible force that pulled at her despite the fear threading through her spine. "What kind of giant was this?" she whispered, voice hoarse, barely a ghost in the heavy silence. She stood rooted, her gaze locked on the arm, terrified to blink, as though it might move if left unwatched. Her fingers trembled, drawn forward by an unseen hand. But she stopped. Some primal instinct screamed within her, "Don't touch it. Don't wake what sleeps." But curiosity was a ravenous beast, and it clawed at her mind with maddening hunger. One step, then another, until she stood close enough to feel its breath, if such a thing existed. She raised her fingers, hesitating, and then her skin met the cold stone. And in that instant, the world shattered. A feral surge of energy erupted through her body. A bone-deep cold knifed through her skeleton. A shiver licked its way up her spine. Then the arm moved. Its massive fingers twitched, slow and grotesque, like something waking from a sleep older than the sun. A gentle tremor turned into a dreadful flex, and then, suddenly, it seized her. The fingers clamped down, like a child gripping its toy. The air fled her lungs. Her scream died in silence. Words crumbled under the weight of the pressure. "No, let me go." But her voice went nowhere. The grip tightened. It was like the collapse of a mountain crashing down on her. She writhed, struggled, but the arm didn't care. It had no need to. Then came the change. A black substance, oily, unnatural, crept slowly from the arm, seeping like cursed sap through the seams of her armor. It burrowed into her skin. This was no mere chill. It had weight. It had will. It slithered inside her, searching for something to claim, something to fill, something to control. And when the vile fluid finally detached from the arm, the crushing force faded. The fingers quivered, then slackened, lifeless. The monstrous hand fell to the ground with a thunderous thud, like the shattered remains of a godless statue. But it was too late. The veins began to appear. First, a single black thread etched itself across her skin. Then another. And another. They pulsed faintly, as if pumping not her life, but something else's into her flesh. No, this can't be, she screamed, her nails tearing at her own arm in a frenzy. But the blackness crawled beneath her skin like fire, merciless and alive. The dark veins spread, unfurling like a web of corruption, coiling around her arm, strangling it, claiming it. The threat was no longer external. It was part of her now. Slipping into her blood, into her soul, devouring her from within. "Get out of me," she cried, voice fractured with terror and despair. Then the itch began. At first, a faint prickling in the palm of her left hand. Then something deeper. Something crawling beneath the skin. She gasped, horrified, eyes locked on her trembling hand. And then it changed. The skin rippled. It twisted, as if something were pressing outward from within. And then, an eye opened. Cold. Alien. Mocking. Its black depths stared up at her with merciless glee. The pupil pulsed, narrow and serpentine. Her limbs locked, paralyzed by sheer shock. But it didn't stop there. Beneath the eye, a shape began to form. A nose. A mouth. Lips curling into a grin carved from madness itself. "What?" she cried out, her voice quivering with disbelief. Then the mouth opened. A sound emerged like water trickling over ice, yet steeped in a cold so ancient it crept into her very soul. "Ah," came the voice, ragged with rebirth, as if savoring its first taste of existence in eons. "What a delight to finally meet my savior." The voice was laced with venomous amusement, a dark resonance of triumph. "How long I have waited for this moment. Eras spent in the void, watching, waiting, searching for a host worthy of my power. And now, at last, here we are." "What are you?" she cried, her voice a tempest of fear and fury. "Why did you bind yourself to me?" The hand's smile widened, as if mockery itself danced upon her lips. "Me," she echoed, her tone a slow dropping poison. "I am an ancient spirit, a buried force long forgotten. I've waited for you patiently. And now..." A low, quiet laugh followed, thick with certainty. "You are mine." "I won't let you control me," she shouted, jaw clenched with unyielding defiance. The voice grew softer, yet dripped with scorn. "Oh, but you don't have a choice," it said, then deepened into a tolling chime within her mind. "I am part of you now. I've woven myself into your very core. You are no longer just human, you are an extension of me." She stared at her palm, eyes narrowed with seething rage. "I will fight you." The hand laughed, a hushed, venom-laced murmur steeped in absolute conviction. "You cannot fight me, nor rid yourself of me. Soon, you will belong to me entirely. You will be nothing but a vessel for my will. And when that moment comes..." It paused, savoring each word like the slow draw of a blade, then whispered with a voice that dripped with ominous promise. "I shall return and rule through you." But the girl was never one to surrender easily.